Elephants are some of the most intelligent animals on the planet. They show their feelings clearly, so it is easy to tell when they're upset. This is exactly what happened with one elephant in India. A crowd of people slowly gathered to watch this elephant dig a deep hole for more than 11 hours. The local residents who watched her frantic movements knew right away that something was terribly wrong. Onlookers stood in shock, completely baffled by her actions, until the shocking truth of her mission finally came to light. Back in 2015, an unbelievable event took place in a remote part of northern India. This specific area is famous for its very dry, dusty, and harsh climate. Living in these tough conditions is difficult for any animal. Yet, against all odds, a herd of 60 elephants were navigating through the tough landscape, completely defying expectations. These elephants had already traveled a very long distance on their migration. Sadly, they ran into an unexpected disaster as they moved gracefully across the Chhatra district, a region located about 100 miles away from the city of Ranchi. A truly unforgettable scene began to unfold. Chhatra is highly regarded as the city of waterfalls, and it frequently sees these magnificent giant animals passing through its borders. The local people living in the village were very used to seeing migrating herds. However, during this very common event, one specific elephant completely broke away from the group. She caught everyone's eye and sparked a wave of curiosity. She left a lasting mark on the locals that made her completely different from the rest of the herd. People in this area saw wild animals all the time, so it took a lot to surprise them. Yet, even with that familiarity, this elephant managed to grab all the attention. She started doing very strange things that completely went against normal animal behavior. Everyone who saw her acting so weirdly wanted to know what was happening. What could possibly make her abandon her entire family? Very soon, the mystery surrounding this lonely animal's terrible situation would be completely exposed, giving everyone the answers they were desperately waiting for. Elephants are highly social creatures who hate being alone. They almost always live in very large family groups, with the males and females following their own unique social rules. The people of the village were totally fascinated by this weird sight. They wanted to know the reason behind her sudden loneliness and to figure out why she broke away from her safe community of female friends. Anxiety and panic surrounded the lone elephant. This raw emotion stirred up even more curiosity among the watching crowd. Her complete isolation held their gaze like a magnet. Every single eye was locked onto the mysterious elephant. The crowd was hooked as they watched her stab the hard ground with her long trunk. She was clearly hunting for something hidden in the dirt. The question on everyone's mind still had no answer. What force made her leave the safety of her family, abandoning the strong bonds that these animals normally protect with their lives? Elephants are famous for their intense family loyalty. They never leave their sick, injured, or elderly family members behind. Her choice to stay alone was completely out of character. The isolated creature pushed the villagers to team up and investigate the scene together. The locals knew something bad had happened, but fear stopped them from getting too close to the dangerous animal. However, pushing through that fear, one brave man decided to step up. He gathered all his courage and walked toward the danger, completely determined to find out the real truth. Tired of waiting around for answers, a man named Jitendra Tiwari gathered his inner strength and slowly walked toward the unpredictable giant. Step by step, he moved forward. He knew how important it was to build trust between them before getting too close. As he looked closely, Jitendra saw pure panic and anger in the elephant's eyes. The elephant suddenly let out a series of loud noises, trying everything in her power to scare the man away from her spot. Jitendra understood the warning loud and clear. Respecting her personal space, he backed away to safety. He was desperate to share what he had just seen, so he sprinted back to the crowd of locals, waving his arms to get everyone's attention. He had clearly witnessed an urgent situation. Tension filled the air as the men gathered around to talk about what they should do next. A shocking detail became clear to Jitendra as he watched the elephant throwing dirt into the air. With pure determination in her eyes, she planted her front feet firmly on the ground and used her back legs to kick away the soil. Moving at a frantic pace, she cleared huge piles of heavy mud out of a growing crater. Even with this amazing display of strength, Jitendra was totally confused. He simply could not figure out the goal behind her exhausting work. The elephant would step back for just a few seconds to catch her breath and then dive right back into the dirt. She refused to quit, completely ignoring her extreme exhaustion. This cycle of scraping the earth, resting for a moment, and digging again went on and on. It lasted for 11 hours. What kind of force could push this animal to work herself to the bone? Normally, wild elephants spend most of their day looking for fresh water and green leaves to eat. They also love staying clean and try to take a cooling bath every single day. On top of that, they usually only sleep for about 4 or 5 hours. But the elephant standing in front of the village had abandoned her normal daily routine. She had only one goal in her mind. Her endless dedication to this mysterious mission made the crowd desperate to understand the truth. Jitendra and his friends knew they were running out of time. They realized they had to distract the elephant so they could safely walk up to the crater and look inside. The men jumped into discussions. They finally came up with a plan, bringing all their ideas together to reach their goal. Moving as one team, they got to work, totally ready to face the mystery waiting in the dirt. A few moments later, the villagers drove up in large trucks packed with sweet, tasty food. They brought hundreds of bananas and a huge variety of delicious snacks. The sweet smell of the fruit drifted heavily through the air. The locals knew this animal had been digging for almost half a day without a single drop of water or a bite to eat. They prayed this amazing feast would be enough to pull her away from the hole. Exhaustion was already crushing the tired elephant. Her energy was almost gone, and her legs looked ready to collapse. Suddenly, she noticed a pile of snacks waiting for her in the distance. The sweet smell of the fruit instantly grabbed her focus, blocking out everything else in her mind. Forgetting the work that had trapped her for hours, she walked toward the trucks full of food. Now that the elephant was distracted by her meal, the brave locals took their chance to start the investigation they had been waiting for. After hours of throwing dirt, the elephant finally gave in to her burning hunger and enjoyed the fruit. While she ate peacefully, the men slowly walked up to the hole. Jitendra showed real leadership in this terrifying moment. He knew the elephant might panic if she heard sudden noises. Taking only a few brave men with him, he crept up to the edge of the crater in a very calm, slow way. They kept their bodies low and quiet, making sure they did not look like a threat. They knew how dangerous a panicked elephant could be, so every single footstep was placed with maximum care. Their hearts hammered loudly in their chest as they reached the edge. When they finally looked down into the darkness, they saw a heartbreaking tragedy. The elephant's tiny baby was buried deep inside the wet mud of the ditch. Seeing the trapped baby instantly explained the mother's frantic behavior. Sadness hit the villagers, giving them a sudden burst of energy to save the helpless calf. In her panic to pull her baby out, the stressed mother had actually made things much worse. Her feet had accidentally pushed piles of loose dirt back down into the pit. This terrible mistake created a huge problem, as the rising mud was getting dangerously close to suffocating the tiny baby. The clock was ticking fast, and a feeling of dread landed on the men. They knew they had to do something right away. They were determined to find a way to stop the disaster that was unfolding right in front of them. The men panicked about how to step in safely. If they did nothing, the little calf was going to starve to death or stop breathing under the dirt. Fear rippled through the entire group. Making things even harder was the terrifying presence of the protective mother standing just a few yards away. The men stared at the impossible problem. How in the world could they save the baby without making the mother angry enough to attack them? The danger level was incredibly high. They couldn't just reach down, grab the baby's little trunk, and pull him to safety. The mother was watching her baby like a hawk, so the men knew they needed a highly creative trick. They thought about safe ways to get the baby out while respecting the mother's natural need to protect her child. It was a very dangerous balancing act that required smart thinking and perfect timing. Jitendra Tiwari pulled out his camera and decided to record everything happening, making sure the world would see his village's amazing bravery. The men finalized their plan to keep the mother looking the other way. They parked the banana trucks just far enough from the hole to keep her happily eating. This gave them a tiny window of time to focus completely on the rescue. Jitendra's video would become permanent proof of the heroic actions taken by his friends that day. In the end, they perfectly used her hunger to their advantage. Jumping into action, the men quickly started digging. They scooped away the piles of dangerous sand sitting on the edge of the pit, which had been blocking the mother from reaching her baby. Even though they were working as fast as they could, they were terrified. They had no idea if clearing the sand would actually be enough to save the calf. They held their breath, waiting to see what the giant mother would do next. They stood frozen in place, crossing their fingers for a miracle. With their hopes high, the men watched the mother closely, waiting to see how she would react to the newly cleared dirt. After fighting the earth for 11 hours, the mother walked back to the edge. She reached down into the newly widened hole and finally managed to wrap her long trunk securely around her baby's muddy body. Pushing with all her strength, she ripped the young calf out of the deadly trap and pulled it up to the safe ground. The teamwork between the desperate mother and the clever locals created a beautiful victory. Relief washed over the crowd as they watched the baby take its first safe steps. With her precious baby finally free from the mud, the mother instantly calmed down. As they walked away from the nightmare, they did something incredibly beautiful. They wrapped their long trunks together. It was a deeply emotional sign of love, looking exactly like a gentle kiss between a mother and her child. This sweet moment left the entire village touched. Watching them bond so closely brought tears to the locals' eyes. It was clear proof of the love that exists in the animal world. The mother and her safe baby finally started walking away, heading back into the wild to catch up with their missing family. The nightmare that had trapped them was over, replaced by a fresh chance at life. As the two beautiful animals faded into the distance, the men watching them felt a warm glow of hope. They prayed that the giant mother and her tiny calf would always remember the kind humans who stepped up to help them survive their darkest hour.